keeping on a weird trend of reviewing obscure shooters or just all-in-out terrible games, today I bring you Raven Squad Operation Hidden Dagger for the PC and Xbox 360. I've been wanting to review this game very badly for, I don't know, close to like 5 years now. For whatever reason, I just never got to it until now. Raven Squad came out back in 2009 and was published by Evolved Games and South Peak Games. It was developed by Atomic Motion, which is a company based out of Budapest, Hungary. I have never heard of that developer before, so I tried to search up other games they developed, and well, you see, this is the only game they've ever made. Did they go bankrupt or just get bought out by another company? I have no idea. I couldn't find anything about it. So before I move on, I do want to point out something I feel is very interesting. On the cover of the game, there are two logos that show up on the top right. Apparently, this game won an award at E3 in 2009. 411 Mania crowned Raven Squad to be the best strategy game, and it was also nominated for a Best of E3 award by GamingExcellence.com. The funny thing about this whole deal here is Raven Squad has a 2 out of 10 rating at IGN, a 3 out of 10 by GameStop, and its current Metacritic score is at 39%. With disastrously poor ratings, what does that say about the games at E3 in 2009? Better yet, what does that say about 411 Mania and Gaming Excellence being credible sources? You can come up with your own ideas and conclusions about that, but for now, we're gonna jump right into this review. First, of course, we have the story of Raven Squad. Well, shit, what actually happened in this game? I remember your plane crash lands behind enemy lines in the jungle, and your main goal is to track down another plane that crash landed because that plane had vital information or some shit. That's really all there was to the story. Yeah, there was more to it than that, but it's so unmemorable, and the way the story is told in this game is so hilariously bad that I couldn't focus on anything that was going on story-wise. I was able to complete the campaign in under 4 hours. It's pretty typical for most linear shooters on the PS3 and Xbox 360. A lot of people complain about too short of campaigns on games like this. Honestly, for Raven Squad, 4 to 5 hours is a good amount of time. I didn't feel like the game went by way too quick, nor did I ever complain about it being too long or that the campaign was dragging. And thinking about this now, it's kinda hilarious to me, because of all the, quote, bad games I've ever played, you know, Enemy Front, Rogue Warrior, Deadfall Adventures, or even those History Channel first-person shooters, this might be the only game in my long, illustrious list of bad shooters I've ever played where I was totally fine with the overall length of the game. It's kinda weird. In this game, you don't just take control of one soldier, you actually have 2 squads consisting of 3 guys per squad, and you can swap through any of the soldiers just by a press of a button. Now each soldier has their own specific weapons and equipment, like one guy has an SMG and a sniper, another one has a shotgun and a rocket launcher, and then there's a guy with an assault rifle who also carries smoke grenades. I think you get the idea. Before I move on to talk about the graphics, I do need to point out that this game is advertised to be not just a typical run-of-the-mill first-person shooter. The developers decided to incorporate real-time strategy to this game. You can go into what they would call the TAC menu, where you're able to view the battlefield from a top-down display. And from here, you can see all the enemies and their locations, as well as control both of your squads, having them move wherever you want, and specifically target any of the enemies in their field of view. But we're going to talk more about this RTS stuff later on, as it's obviously very, very important to this game. Visually, Raven Squad is definitely dated for 2009, but I cannot say that it looks terrible. With a lot of these obscure non-AAA title shooters, You often get a lot of screen tearing, frame rate lag, glitches, and other various issues. Oddly, I rarely ran into any graphical problems in this game. The only thing I really came across is that objects or textures would render right in front of your eyes, but it's nowhere near as bad as some of the other games I've played. Again, it's kind of weird. It's almost as if I'm, I don't know, impressed by this game or something. Although there is something incredibly funny that I feel pertains to the graphics. The character models. Well, instead of, explaining it, just take a look at this cutscene, pay attention to the characters and just how they interact with each other.
Area's secure.
Good. Now let's question that guy. I bet he's seen a lot. Hey, you, Pablo! Vemo aquí. We're looking for a package, you understand? Package.
Pacote. Si, senor.
It was in that plane that crashed here. Know anything about that?
No, senor. Nothing.
You sure about that?
We hear the plane crash. Senor Rodriguez sent some men to search the wreckage, but nothing else. If they find something, they take it to their camp, I promise you. Other side of the village.
Like the man said, he knows nothing.
Everything about this is so obnoxiously bad. The character models all have the same deadpan expressions, their actions, the way they move around, everything about them is so unnatural. And I'm sure you noticed, but holy fuck, the voice acting in this game is so bad. Like, I am struggling to come up with another game, at least on this same generation of systems, with worse voice acting. I mean, yeah, Trouble Witch's Neo is most likely worse, and same with Octomania, but I don't know, like, Raven Squad is definitely up there.
Okay, it's your deal in your backyard, General. How do we proceed?
This road will get us to the main square. You go ahead of us and clear out the crossroads and any enemy checkpoints.
Done. Just watch yourself. We don't need any more casualties.
So with the bad acting, the bad dialogue, and the amusing robotic character models, it took me completely out of the story entirely. The music ain't great, but not bad enough to really bitch about, and the same goes with the sound effects. So now let's focus on the gameplay. The game's controls aren't great by any means. Moving and aiming does take some getting used to due to the fact that it's a little clunky. Also, the controls themselves aren't like the traditional shooters of today. They take more of that old school approach. What I mean is aiming down the sights is done by pressing the right analog button, and reloading isn't done so by hitting one of the face buttons, but instead by tapping the right shoulder button. Many of you younger gamers might think that that's super weird, and, well, I would agree with you. But there are plenty of games around 2009 and older that utilize this same sort of control. Anyway, outside of its clunkiness, the controls are perfectly fine. They're tolerable. Every action you make is responsive. Looking around with the right analog, while yes, isn't nearly as smooth and fluid compared to big budget shooters like Call of Duty or Battlefield, it's still perfectly acceptable and not worthy of complaining about. I mentioned earlier that the developers tried to make this game a mix of first-person shooter and real-time strategy. Honestly, that sounds like a great idea on paper. However, they didn't really utilize it all that well. It's not like the RTS mode or whatever TAC mode is bad. It's just very basic. All you're able to do is move your two squads wherever you want, have them attack a specific target, and use whatever equipment or grenades they may have. That's it. Being that the TAC mode functions very simple doesn't necessarily make it bad. It doesn't have to be overly complex or anything. But at the same time, it needs to be engaging enough so that it's fun and interesting. It's like, okay, if this game didn't have the RTS thing going on, would it really take anything away from the game, and or would it make the game any less playable? No, not really. Yeah, I love the idea of the RTS element to the game, but this doesn't work. The main problem I have is that this is meant to be a real-time strategy game, and there isn't any strategy to this game whatsoever. And I'm talking about both when you're in first-person view or in the RTS TAC mode view. Yeah, it's nice to be able to control your other squad and have them go wherever you want. But you can do that in plenty of other shooters like Brothers in Arms, a lot if not most of the Tom Clancy shooters, SOCOM, and Operation Flashpoint. And all of those games do a significantly better job in the strategy field than Raven Squad. In Raven Squad, the benefit from having one team provide cover fire for you, or even send them to flank the enemy, is so minuscule and so unexciting compared to literally any other tactical shooter I have ever played in my entire life. Another complaint I have is the level design. Not only do most of the levels look the same due to the entire game taking place in the jungle, there's no complexity to them. The game is super linear, you know, passageway here, passageway there, building here, building there. And for a game that boasts being a strategy-based first-person shooter, linear bland level design has the opposite effect, meaning that this game plays just like any other generic first-person shooter game on the market. Now, if there was a more complex level design going on, not even necessarily open world or anything, but you know, more like SOCOM. In that game, you have these large levels to where you can choose how you want to navigate them. That would have made a lot more sense for a game like this. It also doesn't help that the enemy AI is as mediocre can possibly get. And that's very disappointing because, again, for a first-person shooter strategy game, you'd figure that the enemy would be somewhat smart and, I don't know, strategic. One thing I thought was really interesting about this game is that it is painfully easy on any difficulty that isn't the hardest one. I have never died and had to start from a checkpoint in this game at all. The reason being is that all of your soldiers can revive each other, and you can revive an unlimited amount of times. So people might think that's cool and all, but I think it makes the game way easier than it should be. If for whatever reason 5 out of the 6 of my teammates are down, I don't think I should be able to revive all of them as if nothing ever happened. And I also don't think I should be able to revive the same guy 50,000 times in the same level. As for the combat itself, I can't say it's horrible. It's just that there's so much they could have done differently that would have made it good. I know I kind of slammed this game, but of all the other crappy shooters I've played, this one is probably the least offensive of the bunch. Does that mean I recommend it? No, not at all. My main enjoyment came from the bad acting and the horrible cutscenes due to the character models. That's it. This is not a funny bad game, and it's not unplayably bad to the point where you should play it for yourself to believe. Raven Squad is a game that simply exists. Raven Squad had so much potential to be a great game. The idea behind combining RTS with FPS is great, although the developers failed miserably with Raven Squad. I think if another company, a well-established one, were to have taken the idea of this game and made their own game, I don't think it would have bombed like Raven Squad did. It's a shame that Atomic Motion ended up disappearing after it got released, but oh well. Hopefully the employees ended up getting jobs elsewhere in the gaming industry and learned from their mistakes. Anyway, That is the end of this review, everyone. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.